guilt. Let's talk about formula feeding versus breastfeeding and how do I give some formula and still have a loving relationship with my child? There are lots of ways to do this, and let me tell you how. I'm Leah Irby, and I'm a fertility coach and sound healer, and I love educating to help more babies and families be brought together in love. So first of all, if you found this video, I just want to tell you that you're doing a great job, and that if you are Google searching late at night, you are on the right path. But I want to empower people so they can make better choices about feeding and focus on what's important. Now that sounds really funny because everybody talks about all this research and breast milk is the best thing ever and it's the gold and you have to do it as long as possible and as much as possible and be the best at it, and this isn't a contest, okay? The most important thing is bonding with your child. And if formula feeding is the best way to bond with your child, then do it. You have my permission. I know I was an exhausted mom when my child was 6 weeks old. They were born early and were in NICU and then had formula given right away, and I kept working and the goal was to be 100% breastfed. In that week that we did 100% breastfeeding, I nearly lost. I completely lost my crap on my midwife. I came into an appointment, I was in tears, and I'm like, what if I have to give more formula? And my baby had already had formula. It wasn't like this was never introduced already, but I was so convinced that I could not be a good mom and give formula, and it freaked me out. And she finally looked at me and said, Leah, if that's what's best for you, then do it. And we went to combination feeding, part breast milk, part formula, and I didn't look back. And my husband could give me relief in the middle of the night. We traded off, and my child had this beautiful bonded relationship with both of us. And I had a lot of friends that exclusively breastfed, and their husbands were completely not attached to their child for the first couple of years because they were missing all that time. This is not to say that you can't still have a super bonded relationship with exclusive breastfeeding, because I do believe that is a beautiful relationship when it works. But if you want a healthy mama, then you also need to support. So if someone is exclusively breastfeeding, then the partner needs to do a ton of other stuff and support them. And when we just leave the women and say, like, you got to do everything, it's a lot of hours and a lot of pressure and a lot of stress. And sometimes that stress can make it to where your body's like, shut down production. We got to do this. I can handle it. I'm in overload. In my case, I actually believe my milk was a bit on the toxic side because I had some metal dental materials in my mouth previously that were causing infertility, among other things. And I got all taken out and my body was better and I did get pregnant, but I believe there were still some toxins that were stored in the breast milk. And that could have been easily the reason for the jaundice in my son at 6 weeks, coming from the full-on breastfeeding. So for me, it was good to have a combination of formula and breast milk because my child actually needed a break with their liver from some of the toxins that were coming from my breast milk. And but I still felt that it was worth doing some breastfeeding because of the bonding and the other nutrients and different things that you get in the breast milk that you don't get in formula. So there are plenty of positives to both. But what I wanted to say was, what is most important and what I learned is like the number one thing beyond the milk is breast is best because of skin to skin time, not because of the milk. So I'll say it again. Breast is best because of skin to skin time, not the milk. So when we look at the studies and the research, most of what really, really makes a difference is the feeding practices more than the milk. So here's what you can do so that if you are that overachiever parent who wants to do everything correct, then focus on the skin to skin time. Focus on bonding with your child during feeding. So whoever's doing the feeding, try to have as many as you can, but I know sometimes when you're out in public, you might not want to pull your shirt up and feed a bottle underneath your shirt, although you could. I mean, I think people should be more forgiving about like showing skin in public. Who cares? You're feeding your child. But if you don't want to do that out in public, I understand. So, but at least when you're home and when you have the quiet moments, and at least once a day, try to get child on your chest during a feeding and just listen to your child. There's this beautiful thing of sniffing their hair that releases oxytocin. The scent actually produces this love hormone in you, and there's this loop with you. And it's this beautiful bonding thing that we are missing out on when we are struggling with like mastitis and hurt in your breasts and things that we're forcing our body to do something where it's not working right. That is not good. And that is going to create this disconnect with your child where you're resenting your child when you're trying to, or you're stuck at work at every single break having to use the breast pump. And I went to just one day a week of classes starting when my child was 3 months old, and I struggled with that. Like the 1.5 hour break we had, I was running to use the breast pump and trying to eat my lunch at the same time, and people looking at me weird when I'm in a break room from the university area with the breast pump going and I'm trying to eat my sandwich, and I can only imagine if I was actually back to work like 5 days a week and trying to do that. I don't know that I could have kept it up. As it was when I did go back to work when my child was a year old, my milk dried up. It was gone at that point. So I just want to encourage people that it's more important, the bonding, this connection to your child. It's more important, way more important, your mental health. Being able to have those moments where you feel relaxed, where you feel calm and you can tune into your baby. That's so, so important. And I want to empower people when they are bottle feeding to not, if we've set up the whole notion in society that in order to be perfect parent, we have to breastfeed, then it creates this bad feeling of guilt while you're formula feeding. So then that's going to create you being more distracted because you're worried. Oh, I'm not doing this right. Oh, I'm not doing that right. That is taking away from you and your baby's bond. So ditch the guilt, get rid of it, gone, bye. I don't want to see it anymore. Focus on your child and this connection and tune into this love and ask for help. My gosh, we are so programmed in our Western culture that, we have to birth these babies, we have to breastfeed, we have to do all these things, and suddenly, oh yeah, and by the way, I gotta go back to work and do all these things as well, and oh, aren't you taking care of the house too? Why aren't things cleaned up? That's not okay. We gotta support birthing people and allow them to be supported. So on the other side, if you don't have as much support and the stress is killing you, go with the formula, get help with the feeding. But whoever's doing the feeding, tune in. And the other thing I'd say is I found, actually, when I started researching for this talk, I started experimenting with my child, who at that point had weaned off the bottle and breast milk, but was 2.5 or so. I started just saying, let's do skin to skin time. And after a while, my child started requesting skin to skin time. And at 3.5 to 4 years old, my child started asking if they could breastfeed again. And I knew there was no milk, but because I knew the power of the skin to skin time and the bonding moment, I allowed my older child to do this really quick. And it's kind of hilarious breastfeeding because it was like 2 seconds of just mostly sniffing. And just putting lips on my nipple and not even actually drinking any milk or even pretending to drink milk. But my child would then have this little excited and feeling of bonding with me afterwards. And it still does this where we'll ask for, Mom, can I have skin to skin time? And it's usually when there's a struggle or it was a rough day at preschool or something else is going on, and it's a bid for connection. So if we can start this bond, and I just encourage you to go into feeding in an undistracted way. That is super important, and I believe it will make a difference to your bonding to your child, to how well you communicate with them later in life. And this is not to heap guilt on you if you've been doing it differently. Just start now. Start today and get rid of the guilt over the milk itself and tune into your child and say, what do they need? Are they hungry? Let's feed them. Are they done? Let's stop. Let's not force something on our child. Allow them to, tune in. And the more you're tuned in, the more you're communicating. Then if you're using a bottle, you're going to bottle feed on demand like we would with breastfeeding. And you're going to give them what they need and stop when they don't need it anymore. And you're going to tune in and have this conversation. Babies are communicating with you right from the beginning. They're there. They're absorbing everything like a sponge. And the eating time is a time to connect. So when you're not feeding, put your baby down on the floor. Let them look around and have their time on their own. And that's when you can go and scroll through the phone or watch your TV or whatever. But really, really try to put away the technology and focus in on your child. Now, granted, it's a lot of hours. So get some support for that. And also, if you do have to look at a text message or respond or answer the phone or whatever, some of the time when you're feeding, because it's going to happen, then you just say to the child, okay, right now I can't tune in, but Mom's here. I know you're feeding. And you can still be, multitasking. It's not great, but you can still be aware when they're done, what they need. Do they need to be changed, or do they need something else, a shift or whatever? But if you can really, really establish, especially in the beginning, that communication, it's going to set you up for so many good factors later. And I believe the dinner table is so important with our crazy technology world to preserve food. And what I mean by that is preserve meal time as a sacred time, as a time to connect in love, as a time to tune out, to turn off, to let go of the other things in the world and tune into each other. And if you start with the feeding of an infant this way, you're going to continue with that. And it's going to set you up for better eating habits, less guilt around how you eat. If you're in tune with your body and you're paying attention, you're going to eat the things that nourish you, and you're going to not need to eat for covering up emotions, because you can voice your emotions and you can be heard. So tune into your child and give them love through this skin-to-skin time and through connection. And just know that if you need to let go of the breastfeeding, it's okay. You're going to be okay. And you're maybe making a choice that's going to be better for your family. And be confident in that.